At the moment, I would say it looks like Trump may be minded not to issue an immediate military response.
Let's speak to David Charter, who is US editor, assistant editor even of The Times. Good evening, David.
Good evening from Washington, D.C.
What do we know about what Donald Trump is doing right now? He has been in the Situation Room this evening. I presume there will be discussions, plenty of them, about the US military base in Qatar that has been targeted by Iran this evening.
Yes, it's mid-afternoon here. He's been ensconced with his top team for about an hour, at least in the Situation Room underneath the West Wing of the White House. What they're hearing, of course, is that there were 6 missiles fired apparently across the Persian Gulf at Qatar, where there is the biggest US base in the entire region. So that's the Al Udeid air base. Interestingly, that's where the whole war in Iraq was run from back in the day, back in 2003, when when George W. Bush launched the attack on Iraq. At the moment, I would say it looks like Trump may be minded not to issue an immediate military response, and that's because there's been quite a lot of consternation behind the scenes and also online among his base about getting drawn into a Middle Eastern war, because Trump ran, of course, on being the peacemaker and being the president who would not only bring an end to wars, but would be known for the wars that he did not start. That's what he said in his inaugural address. And some pretty prominent people in the MAGA base, and I'm thinking here of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia congresswoman, have been very active online in the last 48 hours. And she actually posted and deleted a really strong attack, actually, on Trump, accusing him of a bait and switch. That he's been pleasing the neocons all along. Well, she quickly deleted that one, but I think it shows the sort of pent up anger that's there, waiting to burst forth.
And this
should there be an escalation on the Trump side.
And this is, David, because many people within the sort of MAGA collective don't believe that getting involved in the Middle East is very America first. And there is a huge concern for American service personnel. This was indicated last week and also has been reiterated again today. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene do not want military service personnel at US air bases across the Middle East to be under any threat at all. I think there's been there is a particular viewpoint there about the American lives that have already been lost as a proxy of world conflict, I suppose, and the opinion that Donald Trump should not be endangering the lives of any others.
Absolutely not. And it was a big feature of Trump's campaign that he wouldn't let Joe Biden forget those 13 American service people who got killed in the bomb at Afghanistan in Afghanistan during the withdrawal. And Trump will quite often suggest that that he lost no American troops in the last 18 months of his presidency. Well, he did actually. He lost 12, but that's Trump. He presented himself in contrast to Joe Biden, and while he could get away with perhaps pulling the wool over the eyes on that one, he certainly won't be able to get away with body bags returning from the Middle East when he's raised expectations, especially among his core voters, a lot of them, that he would not be a Republican president who starts faraway wars like George W. Bush did. That was really part of his whole rise to power. He maintained that he opposed the Iraq War all along, which he did pretty much. So it's pretty important for Trump not to get sucked into this, I think, and so that's why, especially given that we've got a lot of sources are reporting now that the Iranians tipped off the Qataris and the US that these missiles were incoming, because they said they wanted to they wanted to target very narrowly the US base. They don't want to target a neighbor in the Gulf, Qatar. They don't want, they said, the collateral damage, the civilians to be injured or killed. So they through some back channels, they tipped off the Americans, kind of amazingly, about this reprisal attack.
Yeah.
And that calls to mind the way that that they carried out a more symbolic reprisal attack when Trump took out Soleimani, the Revolutionary Guard commander, in 2020. Again, it was seen to be something of a face-saving, symbolic counterattack to enable the regime in Tehran to look tough and look like it was coming back at the Great Satan, as America is often called by the regime there.
Yeah,
but actually not to really do to really provoke escalation.
Yeah, the attack happened around 6 o'clock, and an hour earlier we were starting to get reports through that Qatar had temporarily shut down its airspace. In fact, that's what the nation's foreign ministry confirmed on X, and then flights bound for Doha were diverted because of that. US officials aware of an imminent threat of Iranian strikes on US military base in Qatar. That was being reported by Fox News. Again, ahead of this strike, ahead of the confirmation of this strike, and advice from the US Embassy in Qatar advising Americans living there not to go out. So plenty of sufficient warning. This, of course, it is Iran's response to the US and US weaponry targeting that Fordo nuclear facility in Iran at the weekend, which surprised many people. The speed of Donald Trump's decision to go ahead with that, having said, I want to take up to 2 weeks over this. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been speaking very, very recently, actually, within the last 20 minutes or so, I understand, on TV to Margaret Brennan of CBS. And he was talking about the fact that the US decided to go for this nuclear facility, even though intelligence and the International Atomic Energy Agency had made the assessment that Tehran was in no position to have weapons. Let's have a listen.
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is
everything
the
they need
key
to build a
point
weapon.
in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
The political decision had not
I know
been
that
made.
better than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons.
Do Americans go along with this argument, David Charter? How does the average US citizen get their head around this situation? Donald Trump, launching this attack on Iran.
Well, I don't know all of them, Kate, but if polling is anything to go by, there's a plurality of Americans who are against this. The memories don't need to be that long, do they, of the WMD debate and the effort that was put in by the George W. Bush administration to persuade Americans that Saddam Hussein had terrifying weapons of different kinds, chemical, biological weapons, etc., none of which were found. And the intelligence turned out to be extremely flaky when it all came out later, that it was pretty much a single unreliable source, certainly for the potential readiness of any weapons of mass destruction. So those and of course that led to a very lengthy and costly in blood and treasure engagement in Iraq. So look, the memories are still fresh of that. Americans, a lot of Trump's base would say they liked him partly because he was completely the opposite. He was opposed to the Iraq War, and he was saying he was going to end forever wars and not start any new ones. So that's what's riding on this. And Rubio so far has actually been one of the more.
Oh, David, I'd lost you there, David Charter.
There was no plans for regime change at all. He was very clear about this on Sunday. And then weirdly, Trump came out on Sunday night with this post suggesting that regime change might not be a bad idea. And that just really, again, perplexed a lot of Trump voters, I think, so much so that Caroline Leavitt, his press secretary, had to come out on Fox News this morning and explain that what Trump really meant was, wouldn't it be a good idea, perhaps, if the Iranian regime continues to be so hardline, if the people of Iran overthrew it and got new leaders? So they seem to be getting themselves backing themselves into a bit of a corner here, and that's why
well, this is what Israel is saying as well.
I don't think he'll retaliate.
Yeah, this is what the Israeli government spokesperson said to me earlier here, David, that actually Israel supports a regime change, but they're not going to have anything to do with it. That is up to the Iranian people to rise up and make that regime change happen. I did question whether they were rather abandoning the Iranian people, having ploughed into a lot of their military facilities, got rid of large parts of their military leadership. But Israel are absolutely certain that they have no obligation to the people of Iran. It is up to them to evoke a regime change, not anything to do with Israel. We have heard actually from Iran's supreme leader in the last 15 minutes or so. Ali Khamenei has issued a statement. This is after, of course, his country's strikes targeting that US military base in Qatar this evening. We've not violated anyone's rights, he has said in a post on X, nor will we ever accept anyone violating ours, and will not surrender to anyone's violation. That is the logic of the Iranian nation. Words there from Iran's supreme leader. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has also been on social media, hasn't he, on Truth Social. He's attacking members of the media, several by name. He appears to be angry over reports from several news outlets that the facilities struck by the US in Iran may not have been completely destroyed by those US attacks. They didn't do the job properly, I suppose, is the assertion there. Do we know what the case is here? I mean, I have to feel for these journalists, David. I don't know whether you feel the same about some of your colleagues here to be so blatantly named by Donald Trump on Truth Social.
It's not that unusual, actually. Obviously, he's named one, two, three. I'm just looking at the post now. 1, 2, 3 people from the so-called fake news. The losers at Concast's fake news, the sleazebags in the media. So it goes on. We hear this a lot, of course. And, well, personally, when I read this kind of thing, I tend to think that a target has been hit, perhaps, by the media. And this is I do, because this is the kind of response that we expect from Trump when he's feeling a little bit backed into a corner. He will fight 10 times as hard to get out of that corner and use every rhetorical means that he can think of. So it wasn't just the media, of course, who cast doubt on Trump, saying that the 3 nuclear sites were completely and totally obliterated, were his words on Saturday night in his address to the nation. So we've had the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency out today saying, yes, the bombing probably caused very significant damage, he said. But he added that no one could possibly know the full extent because guess what? It's hundreds of feet underground.
Yeah.
So it's not just the media. It's the head of the body that is in charge of inspection that, in fact, in a way, triggered this whole round of military action
Yeah.
by issuing a hair-raising report.
Look, David, thank you so much for being with us, Assistant US Editor at The Times. You can read David's work and that of his colleagues across The Times live blog, of course, which is at the moment on thetimes.com and in the paper tomorrow. Always great to speak to you, David. Thank you.